Welcome to the State of Developer Education, a podcast by Major League Hacking. We explore how technical leaders are creatively tackling the developer education gap to help prepare the next generation of technologists for the real world and build businesses that can adapt to any changes in the technology ecosystem.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex Gornett from Major League Hacking. So happy to have you joining us for another webinar. Today we'll be chatting with three experts who will share more about their campus ambassador programs. To kick it off, I do want to share a little bit about Major League Hacking. If you're not familiar with us, we run hundreds of events and programs every year that are dedicated to helping the next generation of developers learn new skills and also for companies to connect their products and promote to that organization. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to our panelists today. They'll give you a short introduction about who they are, who they work for, and what their campus ambassador program entails. Do you want to kick us off, Claire, and you can popcorn it to whoever you'd like?
Sure thing. Yeah, huge MLH fan here. My name is Claire Freilich. I work at Postman, which is an API platform used by over 30 million developers worldwide. We rely heavily on some student programs, including an ambassador program we call Postman Student Leader. Over the past 3 years, we've had the pleasure of working with over 200 student leaders and also hundreds of educators as well. So I'm really excited to talk about how that's been mutually beneficial for us. And I'll popcorn over to Ryan.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Ryan Swift. I work at Major League Hacking. I formerly ran our coaches program. Currently, I work as our director of events. So I oversee the entire team of folks that work on all of our member event hackathons, our annual organizer conference, HackCon, any of the kind of events that we have going on. The coaches program is what I'm going to be talking about primarily today. I actually started as a coach 8 or 9 years ago, something wild like that, back when I was an undergrad. So very excited to kind of talk about how the coaches program has evolved over time. I talk about some of how we're leveraging it today. But the program really helps our team of about 20 people full-time scale and support, over 250 in-person, 24-hour plus hackathons a year, and all of the different programs that Alex mentioned up top. So excited to get into that with y'all. And Christine, you want to give us an intro?
Hi, I'm Christine Fan. I'm the EDU program lead at MSI. That kind of just entails all of our education-related marketing, K through 12 and collegiate, but I do heavily focus on collegiate. MSI is a hardware company. We build gaming desktops, components, monitors, basically anything that you could use to game and build your PC, as well as business and productivity products, including, all the desktops, monitors, laptops. I am responsible for a lot of things. One of my big focuses is our student ambassador program. It's one of the ways that we work with collegiate esports programs around the nation to provide students professional opportunities and, really build out their experiences to, get them where they need to go after college and really build a positive community around MSI and overall, just have fun and, play some good games.
Thank you all so much for the background there. To start off, I'd love to also just open the conversation a little bit. Each of you all is probably going to have some nuance to how you run your program, how you built your program, and how you think about your program. Can you all share more about how the program you're running and the different activities that you have within it align with your overall developer relations or community engagement strategies?
So for MSI, one of the big components for us is integrating our hardware into esports labs. And as you know, a lot of programs, directors, and faculty, they really want to make sure that the hardware they're putting in aligns with their program values. You can get decent hardware from any hardware company, but there are only so many companies that are willing to provide opportunities for their students and help engage with them and provide learning opportunities. And so that's a huge component for us for this ambassador program. And it's one of the draws that gets colleges engaged with us to be interested in not just our hardware, but also how we can actually build a community and build professional opportunities for these students. Because when you're building out an esports program on campus, it's not just about competition. It's about providing students the skills and tools they need to be successful students and be successful professional workers after graduation.
To jump in on my end here, I think the coaches program, it's almost hard to talk about how it aligns with our developer relations goals or strategies, because the coaches program really is a lot of the secret sauce of how MLH scales, like I talked about already here. With a team of 20 or so people full time, we don't have the staff to support all of the hackathons we work with, particularly on the weekend of, and being in person with our organizers. There's a really big component of our value proposition to those organizers and to our community. And so the coaches program is really this bread and butter of so much of what we do that it's hard to think about it in how it aligns with our strategies, because it's so core to what we do. The coaches program provides a lot of opportunities to our community as well. And I do think that's also worth highlighting. We've always viewed it as a pipeline for some of our most engaged community members, folks who are, volunteering in their freshman year or their sophomore year. They become an organizer at their hackathon. Then they go on to join the coaches program. And we even have some folks on our team now, myself included, who were coaches and then joined us full time. So it really is this kind of pipeline that we use to find awesome people to join us full time and continue to grow the community and grow the entire ecosystem of hackathons.
Yeah, I mean, MLH is all about students, so I can definitely see how a student program is directly impacting your strategy. In our case, like Postman's vision is to connect 100 million developers worldwide. Really, you got to empower the next generation if you're going to achieve that. For those of you that don't know what APIs are, they're application programming interfaces, and it's how all of our software talks to each other. So really, it is a critical skill for students to know before entering the workforce. So I would say our role in our company strategy is helping continue to build that moat, making Postman the tool that students become familiar with APIs around. That's what they reach for when they want to work with APIs. It happens to be a great way to visualize and understand how APIs work. So for us, it's fun to get that into students' hands. And we also get the benefit the other way of having direct feedback from students on how they're using it in projects. Yeah, so our strategy is linked to building the moat.
That's awesome. I'm curious for you all, something you all said is these ambassador programs are a way for people to engage more deeply with your products. How do you all actually go about finding these ambassadors, though? Is there an application process? Is it a forum where you see someone that's particularly active? Could you all share a little bit more about that?
For the coaches program, we're really fortunate that our coaches themselves are often a great resource for finding new coaches. They're going out and traveling to events, talking with local organizers who are exactly the type of folks that we want to recruit for the program as well. And so a very, very high percentage of our coaches actually get referred to apply by coaches at their events, which is great and kind of self-sustaining in the long run. There's, of course, an application process we go through and all sorts of stuff there. I think we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But for us, it really is kind of self-sustaining from the existing community, which is great. Certainly didn't start out that way. We did a lot of outreach to some of our most engaged organizers to kind of reach that point. But 10 years on at this point, we're in a pretty stable spot with it.
In our case, I would say it kind of varies regionally too. Since the beginning of our program, I would say we had to take a very guerrilla approach in the beginning, just reaching out, going to clubs, and putting the word out that we have a student program. But I would say regionally, we're seeing a different effect. In the APAC region, we don't do a ton of outbound, to be honest with you. I guess the Postman brand the name precedes it, and people come to us. We just have a form on our website and we get tons of applications. What we are trying to strategize and figure out is how to motivate students in the Americas, especially, which is ironic because we have some headquarters here in the US and it's really the area we're struggling to, I wouldn't say struggling, we've made a lot of gains in the last year, but to get it to that same level where people are just coming in and applying like they do in APAC. But yeah, definitely it took a lot of guerrilla legwork in the beginning. One of my colleagues, Ali, was definitely on the ground, reaching out, going to lots of events in person. And that's how we got started. But then the ball kept rolling after that.
For MSI student, when we first launched the program, because I had come from the community space before, I was already pretty well connected with a lot of these student clubs and programs. And in this space, it's very small, so there are only so many student ambassador programs that are actively providing students professional opportunities. So how we do it is we'll have a form open for about a month, usually April. We'll make social posts, announcements, post it in our student Discord server of about 3,400-ish students. And then it kind of just operates via word of mouth. A lot of these students are here because they want to be. It's very passion heavy. And so they're looking for any type of, program to grow outside of their club, because that's one of the main ways that students nowadays try to differentiate themselves, because you have so many colleges and universities that are starting either their own esports program, their own esports club. When students want to work in esports, they want to work in gaming, they want to work in hardware, it's usually not enough anymore to just be a club leader or program leader. A lot of these companies also look for external experience, especially in the hardware space, because it requires a lot of technical marketing. So, students, they try to maximize anything they can. And I will also say that we pay our student ambassadors, and we are actually one of the only hardware ambassador programs to do that.
I'll second that. We also do provide a stipend, and I can't deny that that is a motivating factor for many students.
It's interesting. You all talk about the brand power, but I don't want to overlook the work each of you all put in as individuals or other team members put in to get the community to where it is, right? And while the Postman brand or MLH community or MSI is certainly a draw, I think something you all touched on is that it's more of the community sustains itself once you've reached that critical mass. Ryan, you talked about how you were a coach and you went through it, and then now you're helping run the coaches program. Christine, you had a similar experience, though, with a different program, being an ambassador. Before MSI, you were a campus ambassador at NVIDIA, I believe. I'm curious how your experiences on the ground there impact how you think about the program at MSI and how you've actually gone about building it.
Yeah, so when I was a campus ambassador for NVIDIA, that was also heavily grassroots. I will say it's probably, the collegiate esports golden era. It was super active pre-pandemic, and a lot of students were doing different events. NVIDIA had just come out with the 10 series graphics card and was doing extremely well. And they had seen that they had kind of, reached a saturation in the market. There were only so many people who were going to buy new graphics cards. So they had started that program with the intention to, build more, create more gamers, to build positive experiences around gaming and show people that, you don't have to look or be a specific way to be a part of the community. And one of the ways that they did that was having student advocates who would, booth at events, travel to events, and, get learning experiences and kind of just be that ground level connection with other students, because there is a different type of connection that you get when it's student to student, peer to peer, instead of, administrator to student or, professional to student. When I was there, it was a volunteer position. We did get a lot of great experiences, but one of the pain points was that because when you have unpaid positions, it can be gatekept by students who can't afford to take on that unpaid labor and have, loans, rent, and, may have to also support their own families. And so when I built the MSI student program, I really took into account accessibility and ensuring that it didn't matter, what background you came from. There was still an opportunity for you to, get experience and be able to sustain yourself. Because if you're spending anywhere from 20 to, 30 hours a month doing projects for me, then that's time you're not getting paid, working a job. And so that's one of the main ways that we really show that we think about students and engage with them. And it works a lot with the programs as well, because in this economy and in this market, administrators also care about that.
I like that you all called out either the stipend or the fact that it's paid, because I think sometimes with these community programs, there can be a connotation that it's purely volunteer work, right? But that's not necessarily the case. And for numerous reasons, it's beneficial that you all do offer some sort of compensation there. Claire, just to see if we are 3 for 3, were you ever involved in any ambassador programs before you started running the one at Postman?
I was on the student programs team, not managing it, as a community manager or kind of like a developer advocate type of role first. So yes, and actually I got hired at Postman through an ambassador program when I was just giving Postman workshops online and someone reached out. So yeah, I've got a little on the ground experience myself. I was not getting paid for that stuff. I just like love to do it. But I definitely second what Christine said, like on top of, volunteering their time and, that's taking hours out of their day. Students are busy. I think you all remember being a student. You never really clock out of being a student. So if you're going to be utilizing their time, make sure it's worth their time too.
Absolutely. Claire, just to stick with you here, you talked a little bit about the challenge you've been facing with ramping up the program in the States specifically. Can you talk a little bit more about that, but also other challenges you've had in running campus ambassador programs and how you've addressed them?
Oof, yeah. Well, if I had the answer, it wouldn't be a challenge. So we're still trying to figure it out. But yeah, I think, regionally, there's just going to be different motivations. I think what we have found is in APAC in particular, one of our North Star metric on our team and how we measure impact is how many people complete our student expert training. It's an online training. Student leaders are also promoting this training, and we attribute how many experts they get to them. We could do a better job of sharing that impact back to them, which we're working on doing. But yeah, the challenge is we found in APAC that certification is really motivating because it helps you stand out as a candidate after you graduate. Postman has a big name. For some reason, that motivation doesn't seem to translate perfectly in the US, at least. So we're trying to figure out, okay, what is it that students really are seeking in ambassador programs or opportunities? And one hypothesis we have is more demonstrable project delivery. So we launched project-based learning towards the end of last year. That is different than a certification in the sense it encourages you to riff on the project and do a little creative element so that students can kind of get that feeling of, wow, I built something, see the value firsthand, and maybe even want to share that out with their peers. So we've been experimenting with that. The challenge too is we've scaled quite quickly. So it's a 3-year-old program. We're now over 220 student leaders worldwide. We were just talking this morning, okay, how can we further support them? Because we have a 4-person team. How can we actually enable them to get something out of the program? We know we're getting something, but we want to supply a little bit more. And I think Christine touched on this too, but enabling that peer-to-peer interaction is a huge thing. You're never going to be able to do it all by yourself, and you wouldn't want to. Peers can mentor peers, and maybe even some companies have a professional ambassador program. So working professionals doing it. You could think about connecting them, student leaders and professional working ambassadors, and have a real 2-3 tiered mentorship program. Anything to there's non-monetary ways to motivate and support students. But yeah, logistically, you just have to figure out what you want to focus on and experiment with because there's so many different options you have.
As a 4-person team, I can imagine too, you have to be very intentional with what you decide to build out and where you think those efforts should go. But that's pretty cool that you all have 220 already. And I would imagine if we were to come back at the end of 2024, maybe 300, maybe 400, do you have a number in mind yet that you're shooting for?
I don't want to have student leaders just for the sake of making that number go up. Before we even think about dialing that up, I want to make sure what we're providing is a quality experience for them. So I'll get back to you on that. First, I want to make sure that they're getting out of it what they need to get out of it.
It'll be question number one on the next webinar of DevRel Explained. Ryan and Christine, have you all encountered similar challenges to some of the ones that Claire spoke about, or are there other challenges that you've seen in your programs?
I might be jumping back slightly here, but Claire talked a lot about like not being able to kind of clock out from being a student. And I think managing that has really been the biggest issue or biggest challenge with the coaches program. Yeah, these are really ambitious, talented folks who join this program. They're going to school. They're often running a hackathon of their own. They have sometimes jobs in addition to what they're doing for MLH. They have family life. It's, or your early 20s, like when you're in college, I think is a big opportunity for lots of people to learn about themselves. And I think we've had to help a lot of our coaches like figure out how to say no to things, how to balance all their responsibilities. And so when I think about big challenges for the program, I think it's a really, really common one that we deal with all the time. Anytime we bring a new coach into the program, like trying to help them find that balance between all those different things they want to do. And that's kind of immediately what came to mind for me here when Claire was talking about it, when you asked that question. But very, very common and very, very understandable issue for our kind of community and team to face there.
Yeah, I do agree. When you're a student, you have only so many hours in the day. If you're spending 8 hours doing homework, class, and then maybe you still have to make food, eat, do your hygiene, that can be anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours a day. Plus, all the socializing that students like to do and remain engaged with not just professional extracurriculars, but just, for fun and mental health and well-being stuff. So a big thing for me is always managing expectations and being flexible and being efficient, because I am also the only person running all of our education marketing in the US. So at least on my end, there is a lot to manage besides just the student ambassadors. And then also, Claire, you mentioned having projects as a way to draw students. We also do that as well. My student ambassadors all get resources to do a capstone project for the year, that if they need hardware to put on a demo-based event on their campus, I provide it. If they need pricing, marketing support, making social posts and promoting their stuff on campus. We try to see what their needs are and meet them where they're at. And not every ambassador is going to be able to, have the same level of work, because they all have different obligations. So, really taking into account each person's circumstances and being flexible and communicative when things happen. And then a lot of it is just relying on kind of incentivizing the clubs to engage with those student ambassadors. So not really having them do projects specifically for us, but seeing what they're currently already doing, and understanding, how their schedules may change, what kind of activities they do, how their campus layouts change, what resources they have access to, and seeing what needs they have, and meeting those specific needs gets them much more engaged, because they don't really see it as, oh, you just want to market to me your product. It's, oh, I want to do this project that I really care about, and you have the resources to make this project easier. What do you want me to do for these resources? And so it is a bit slow growth, but it's high quality growth. And these programs, they're not just, one and done engagements. They come back year after year, in some cases month after month, because they need the resources at the end of the day. And we're one of the few organizations that can provide it to them. So we definitely try to create a symbiotic relationship through that.
Something that stood out to me is that while these ambassadors are helping promote, right, your all's products or services, you're just as concerned, if not more concerned, with making sure that they also have the support and resources, and are having a high quality experience, specifically not getting burned out, and helping them say no to things or learn how to manage their time. Last question for the group here before we go to another topic. How do you go about balancing that with specifically with, I would imagine there's some minimum level of engagement for it to be beneficial on both sides.
MLH's perspective here, I think a lot of it is just being really transparent with folks, and I think not that we want to see any coaches fail, but doing some planning around knowing that some people are going to overcommit themselves, or they're going to need to take a semester off, or they have a really heavy course load. And so we do some pre-planning for those worst case scenarios. We overhire and have the flexibility to support people when they need to take that break, and then just being really transparent with folks, right? Like if stuff happens, I know that things come up. We give people the opportunity to learn from that, get the feedback. If it becomes a repeat problem, you address it as you need to. But I think it's really trying to be as understanding as possible and doing everything you can on your end to mitigate it is a lot of how we manage that concern.
Yeah, and one thing that helps too is just to set the expectations really clear up front, so people know what they're signing up for when they apply. With that in mind, like we made sure to set the bar really low, like understanding that students are busy. Not that like what they do is like minimal by any means, but like, for example, only requiring like one workshop per semester, like that's already a lot. So, but trying to like make it clear, like, okay, like here's your end of the bargain and here's what you get from us. And while you're designing that criteria, just keep in mind, these are busy people. What's the bare minimum you can ask of them? And also what's the maximum you can give them? If you can get the sweet spot there, you'll have people signing up for your program.
Yeah, I hugely agree. It's always about being transparent and setting the bar, not exactly low, but within reason, and understanding that, if I'm having students create an event for me, it's not so simple as just finding a room and telling people to come through. It's, what's the process for room bookings on campus? Do they already have an active social media channel to communicate to that community? Do they have club members who are willing to be involved and support other logistics? Understanding that all of that stuff takes a lot of work, and if they're doing multiple projects at a time, taking classes, a lot of my ambassadors have multiple jobs because they are truly, truly passionate. Understanding that all of that stuff takes a lot of effort, mental load, and being very transparent, communicative that, telling them, okay, you've suggested that you want to do this project, but think about all the steps that it's going to take to get there, and tempering their expectations so that they can recognize when they're overcommitting and building that skill set themselves, because, we're not going to be there, for that long. People are not going to hold their hands forever. You have to teach them those skills themselves so that when they come out, they have positive testimonials and they can communicate to other students about their positive experiences and saying, yeah, it's a lot of work, but I got so much out of it. And I never once felt like I was being overworked, because, at least in the collegiate esports space, that's a big problem here. A lot of students, they burn out. Usually when they're in a club, you could have someone managing, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, creating video content, meme content, announcement posts, scheduling the calendar, and you have someone maybe managing all the inventory, shipping, room bookings, budget, as well as, sponsorship outreach. And so many people are working multiple roles in their current organizations, and then adding on whatever external third-party asks that we have. It's a lot. So really understanding the amount of work it takes to be on campus and have those students do those things for us is very important, and letting them know that, as long as they're communicative, there's always a solution to solve the problem. And as long as you pick yourself back up, you can't consider it a failure because you haven't decided to fail.
Those are all wonderful suggestions. I think we can all continue to admire the ambition of students. And I think we also all remember that we used to think we didn't need sleep like the other human beings in the world. Ryan, I want to kick it back to you now. You in addition to attending tons of hackathons, have interviewed hundreds of MLH coaches or potential MLH coaches. What do you look for when you're trying to identify a high potential coach, and what ends up differentiating those that are the most successful in the program?
Yeah, for sure. So there's two things that I want to talk about in particular. The first one, I have this kind of series of questions we ask about the kind of like what they've left behind or what their impact on their local club has been. And I think it speaks really well to people who are really intentional about the work that they're doing. A lot of the people who apply for the coaches program are hackathon organizers, and all of our organizers are awesome, amazing, talented folks. But there's a certain breed or class or whatever you want to call it of organizer who really thinks about their hackathon in the long term, really realizes that they're going to be in college for 4 or 5 years, however long, and then that program's going to go on without them. And so I really look for folks who have this focus on that program, that hackathon, that event beyond just their own time in it. So that's one of my favorite things to look for. I think that helps a lot in the coaches program as well, because they're then going out to all these other events and kind of spreading that ideology, to other people and things like that. The other thing I really swear by for interviews, which I think is maybe a little bit more out of left field, I really love to do role play interviews with folks. So we will do a kind of like a theater of the mind LARP exercise with our coaches as they're interviewing, and we'll give them like really ridiculous, tough conversations to have, where somebody's laptop goes missing at the hackathon they're at, or, a sponsor gets reported to the organizers for being inappropriate. And it's these really challenging, tough conversations to have. And it is a great way to kind of showcase how they handle pressure and how they handle unexpected situations. I think everybody goes into an interview ready to talk about why they wanted to apply for a job. I don't think a lot of people have the time to prep ahead of time to figure out what to do in a situation where someone's laptop gets stolen. It really shows you a lot about how people think on their feet and how they handle those tough, kind of hectic situations that come up at events.
I can personally share that Ryan does keep you on your toes. Though I'm on the full-time team when I went through coaches training, I did have to do some of the role play, but it's really helpful. The events that I've had, I definitely felt a lot more prepared for. And I think the art of interviewing will never go away, but I like the signals you're looking for there in terms of impact and how can they actually communicate in that setting. Christine, can you talk a little bit about how you keep campus ambassadors engaged and motivated during their tenure, and especially with how much is being done in a virtual, hybrid, and remote setting now?
Yeah, I always try to be very communicative with my student ambassadors. It can be difficult at times because everyone has different schedules, West Coast and East Coast. So always being mindful of their time, and also telling them, that if they have questions, they don't need to send me an official email. They have, my Discord DM. We do a lot of our organization on Discord. I like to keep things very light. And, we have serious moments, but I think when you're too serious, students tend to get scared in a way where they're like, oh, I have this question, but I don't want to seem dumb. I don't want to seem like I wasn't paying attention. And I always tell them, there isn't any question that they won't be able to ask. I always make sure that they know everything that's going on, making sure that if they can't miss if they miss a meeting, there are notes for them. If they need to join a meeting but they can't talk because, maybe they had a family emergency, or they're commuting to school, that they can just listen in, trying to keep as many channels for communication as possible. Some students, they only have time to talk to me once a month, and some students, they want to talk to me every day, and that's okay, because everyone else, is different. And so meeting them at their level keeps them engaged. It's just, being as flexible as I can, and understanding that sometimes the gamers, they're gonna ask me questions at 12 a.m. And, I might not always respond, but I tell them, if you have a question, just ask it when you think of it. And, even if I don't get to it immediately, I will get to it the next business day, and it makes them comfortable enough to keep that channel of communication open and let me know if they have problems or if they have ideas that they want to do, and really just making them feel heard.
I was worried for a second, Christine, you were going to tell me you respond at 12 a.m. and I was going to say that we have to take some of the advice you have for the students and get you away from Discord or take it off the phone for a period there. Claire, I want to move to you here for a second, because Postman, the way your all's product works is really interesting, because your ambassadors not only have to know about Postman, but they also have to know about the various APIs that you all support. How do you go about designing curriculum when it is so open-ended in terms of the topics they could tackle? And what are some of the ways you've seen student leaders go above and beyond and how they taught their fellow students about Postman and its capabilities?
This is actually a question our company is asking ourselves as a whole, like not just inside the student programs, because Postman's history has largely been like the users have been telling our story. Like, how do you use Postman? And this year we're all trying to teach the world, okay, here's how you can use Postman. So it's kind of like bowling, like you can go bowling, but if it's your first time and you don't have the bumpers on, it's not going to be fun. Like you're just hitting gutter balls the whole time. Whereas if you have those bumpers in the beginning, you can learn to like bowling and understand why it's fun or useful in a tools case. So our role is providing those bumpers, but trying to find that balance where it's not such a hand-holding exercise that you can't let them go and they can't leave the nest. There needs to be like some element of creativity there. So how we prepare student leaders, we have a prerequisite. You have to complete the student expert training, which does cover API basics. It covers how to interact with APIs in Postman. Beyond that, I will be the first to admit, like we have room for improvement in helping nudge them out of the nest. But I'm continuously shocked by what students come up with. Yes, content creation is a goal of ours to like make more curriculum that's half handholdy, half creative. But at the same time, I find if you just provide them the bare minimum that they need, space to talk to their peers, something to do, at least to get started, and, some sort of motivation. We talked about stipends. That's one, of course, but there's so many like non-monetary perks you can give to students, like ask me anything with engineers in the company, ask me anything with the CEO is a huge perk. Resume workshops, we try to do quarterly meetups. We're going to be better about it this year so that peers can meet their peers and do fun activities together. We pay for their lunch for those. And early access to product features. If you're a software company, that's a pretty easy thing to not only benefit the students and make them feel special for being first in line, but the product team gets a direct line for feedback, and it's relatively low stakes because these are not paying customers, right? So we try to find those wins, and we find if you give them the bare minimum ingredients, students can take that and run with it. Even if we do have some missing content on our end, we've seen students they came up with this idea of an API literacy tour where they aren't just teaching peers on their campus, but they go to like 10 schools around their country and like make a whole like choo-choo train event out of what we never had envisioned before. The student just came up with that and did that. Other student leaders saw that and started copying it. We have a similar thing with API Fest, where different student leaders in a close region would come together and do like a full API full day kind of summit. We didn't come up with this ourselves. The students kind of did because they had the basic ingredients there. Do we have room for improvement? Absolutely. We're working on it. But don't underestimate students and their energy.
Yeah, I feel like a little bit of your philosophy coming out there is that the bare minimum with max benefits. How can you give people the things they need and then just let them run with it, but also know that they're going to get out of it what they need of it. Ryan, I'm curious if you have anything to add as well. The MLH coaches program is similar in that they have to understand a bunch of different products and how they work, and maybe being able to help troubleshoot them or how you would use them in a specific scenario at a hackathon. Could you talk a little bit about how you go about educating the coaches and making sure they're prepared for that?
Yeah, for sure. I think, transparently, this might be really specific to our program, but one of the great things about hackathons, in my opinion, is that you don't need to be particularly technical to be a great mentor at one. I think a lot of the stuff we teach coaches on mentorship and debugging is really just about like asking the right questions and helping people through situations when they're kind of in their own way. And so I'm sure many people on this call are familiar with rubber duck debugging, and like that's often what we educate our coaches on how to do, regardless of the platform, right? I'm not an expert in every partner we have. I'm not an expert in every programming language, but I can sit down with just about any hacker out there at one of our events and have them talk me through what they're trying to create and ask good questions and help them come to that solution themselves. And so for us, a lot of our education around our partners and things like that is actually pretty heavy in the logistics realm, where we're talking about, how they need to implement it on our end, like what they need to accomplish at the event, that sort of thing. And a lot of the actual like product knowledge is something that they're going to pick up in their own time as they're seeing projects, as they're maybe dabbling with things themselves. But just a lot of general advice on debugging and asking good questions. So
that's super helpful. We've talked a lot about the the nuts and bolts or some of the details about how you run the program. I want to talk a little bit now about the actual metrics and KPIs that you all are using, because we do live in an age of data. I think all of us want to have some sort of data that we can make decisions on, and leadership also wants to see that data. For the group here, and I'll start with you, Christine, and anyone else can chime in. How do you tie your campus ambassador program back to company KPIs, and what are some of the different ways you're trying to quantify the ROI of your work with student communities?
So for us, because we are a very small space, it's pretty easy to kind of just gather sentiment, whether it's seeing specific schools that engage with us because of our ambassador program, purchase our equipment for their space, or seeing an increase in events being done on campus with our sponsorship included, and kind of understanding that it's not really about the individuals themselves, but an overall result. We do look at kind of everything holistically. There are things that we might try that aren't as successful, and there are things that we try that are successful, and understanding that you're going to get both. And as long as you're collecting as much data as you can, being able to show the relationship of, hey, we had an ambassador here, and that led to the school, including us in these two events later on, or the ambassador participated in boothing at this event, and we got this many students engaged with our promo code, clicking at links, following our social accounts, joining our student Discord, just gathering as much of that as possible. And then also a big component is the content creation and using what our student ambassadors create for our marketing material, because again, a peer speaking to another peer is going to be much more impactful than a professional speaking to a student, because once you're out of college, with things moving so fast, the environment moves fast, you lose a lot of that ground level experience and connection, because you have a job, you have different life goals and things that you care about. And so that's kind of how we do it. It's a lot of chasing students at times as well, because they have busy schedules, lives, and so trying to make their reporting as smooth as possible as well really helps, because students, they have no framework to go off of when they're just building events out, or they're just starting the club out. They don't really know what's important for a company because they've never worked a high level job like that. So being able to ask those questions of like, I need photos of this type, here are examples, I need the stats of how many attendees you had, links to all these social posts that you said you were going to do for me, take screenshots, telling them it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be pretty, I just need the information and we can go from there. You can always get better at something, but you have to start it. And so I find that getting the students to start is usually the hardest part, because they're so afraid of failure. And there's such a perfectionist attitude for a lot of students that they can kind of be their biggest criticizers as well. So being that external voice and saying, you can do it, here's everything that you need to do it. And, like Ryan said earlier, just asking the right questions, being able to show them how to problem solve and really give them that foundational knowledge. Because, at the end of the day, a lot of this marketing, it doesn't really matter what they're choosing to talk about. A lot of the foundational skills are the same. So when you equip them with those, you can really see them flourish.
Yeah, I find this whole panel a very interesting selection of people because we got Christine in a hardware company, Ryan, events that are very student centric. So like students are your metric. In Postman's case, we're a software company, and I would say, I mentioned it earlier, but like since the beginning of our program, our KPI has been student expert certifications as kind of our North Star. We had to grasp at some measurable, metric that we could attribute to API literacy. And that's how we invented a metric for ourselves so that we could say, hey, here's the moat. Here's how the moat has grown over the past year. This year, we're starting to make even more of a connection to product in the sense like, okay, now we've got them interested in Postman. How can we nurture them into the next level? And I think for a lot of companies that do software, like student ambassador programs are going to be not directly related to your revenue, right? At least in the short term. Like long term, they might become like Postman fans and like want to use it at work, and then one thing leads to another, and suddenly that team is using Postman. So it's extremely long tail game for some software companies. That's like where we're positioned. So for us, it's finding how do we speak the language of the business team and the data team, and how can we meet them halfway and prove that, hey, we are, getting students to the level where they understand how to use our product for the value prop that it has. While also protecting that we aren't going to be charging students anything. We're giving them money. Students usually don't have credit cards anyway to pay for any service. So like, you have to be thinking long tail, and that's going to look different in every scenario, as I'm sure all of us are going to have very different answers here.
I won't repeat myself too much, but the KPI and the metrics for the coaches program really is around scale, which I think I kind of opened up with here. We have a stat around when we need to send a full-time team member to an event versus being able to send a coach there, and like that's a really big metric for us because we know that the coaches program is supposed to help us make sure that we have staff to cover those hackathons. Everyone on our full-time team still goes to hackathons because we all love them, but it is still a very useful metric for seeing how effective that program is at helping us scale and support all those events. But there's lots of stuff that both Christine and Claire have said here that resonates with me, but I'll keep that one short and simple because that really is the big point of our ambassador program in an event space.
Yeah, and with all, sorry to interrupt you, Alex, like with all DevRel activities, there's always that other metric that's really hard to measure, and it's kind of like love for your product. And I mean, I guess there's a lot of ways you can go for it. There's NPS, you can go about like social media mentions or whatever, but something it's also you just feel when you have a space for it. And I don't know, there's a lot of ways to go about measuring that, but it's definitely not negligible. It's actually kind of one of the main things if you're trying to make a name for your product.
I like what you just said there. I was going to tie into what I said. I also like how you call out the long tail part, because I think everybody knows it's so important to engage with the student community and get them excited about your product and introduce it to them. But there's this balance sometimes of how do we measure the impact here and now while keeping in mind the long-term benefits of that. And last question for the group here, we just talked about how you measure these things internally. Equally as important, though, is the benefits and opportunities you're actually giving to the students themselves. Can you all share a little bit or recap, because I think you've sprinkled this throughout actually as you've talked about your programs, some of the opportunities you've seen this create for ambassadors as they go into industry, or some of the unique perks that you're giving them as being a member of your program? We'll start with Ryan this time.
So I think for the coaches program, there's kind of two pathways that jump to mind immediately for me here. I think one is certainly getting more involved with our full-time team. We've had a lot of coaches, a lot of full-time team members currently who started in the coaches program in some capacity. And that's often something I'm really excited about. Like we've gotten to foster this relationship for years and then have them join our full-time team and, know they can do really high quality work. And that's certainly exciting. The other thing that comes to mind here is that, DevRel internships really aren't a thing. There certainly are some out there, don't get me wrong, but DevRel is a small enough, like tight-knit enough community, I think, in many ways, that finding a job in DevRel, particularly at that level, is like not really something that exists out there super commonly. And so the coaches program, I've always felt like is this very interesting opportunity to get your feet wet with DevRel. I've talked to so many coaches and so many people in our community who love programming, aren't sure they want to be a computer scientist full time. They're not sure they want to sit and write code every day. I think the coaches program really gives them this opportunity to explore some of these other tangentially related things where, they can do a little bit of marketing, they can do events, they can get experience talking with sponsors, they can get practice to be a sales engineer at some point in the future. It really gives them this kind of wide open space to test out and find out a bunch of stuff about themselves. I think particularly when they're in college, it's a really invaluable experience. We've had coaches who are, in all sorts of roles at all sorts of different companies. We have somebody who, writes speeches for a tech company. We have people who have gone on to be founders. We've had people who, go into DevRel. We've had people who decide that they actually do want to program full time. People who've switched out and become lawyers. It really runs the full gambit. And I think the coaches program definitely plays a role in giving people the space to figure that out. So it's kind of what comes to mind for me.
I'm really happy that Ryan mentioned like the hiring pipeline and that being kind of a stepping stone into DevRel. I'll say Postman is one of the rare places that did actually have a DevRel intern position, and that's actually the story of one of my amazing core teammates, Anjal, who was a student leader, and because we recognized her as a student leader, knew she'd be great for this intern opportunity we had. And she's been working now full-time the past 2 years and just crazy excelling. And so that's an example of a direct hire to a company. But like you said, you're also giving them a stepstone to whatever opportunity they're going out there. Leadership skills are very transferable. So giving them resources to exercise that, to practice that, to have a community to talk to other people about that is invaluable. The other perks we've talked about a little bit, stipend will always sweeten a deal. Trust me on that. Swag, students go nuts over swag. I'm not a fan personally, but students, they love it a lot. We give letters of recommendation to student leaders that have been active to help them on their job journeys. Digital certificates also help them on their job journey. We give them a platform. We had like a student summit online and lives on YouTube. There are talks that they came and volunteered to do so they can put that on their resume. Ask Me Anythings, early access to product features. We try to do what we can.
Yeah, on my end, I agree with Ryan. It's very much a stepping stone program, understanding that not every student wants to, do what they're doing right now as a full-time position, and working around that to just give them the tools to explore new things. I really encourage my students to, over the summer, to look for other external internships, because when you want to be creative, you need creative building blocks. And if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you're not getting new perspectives and ideas from other people to, grow and be a better version of you. And so ways that we help to do that is I have an ongoing job board for our student community that I'll, source internships, full-time positions, anything that is related to any sort of skills that students are currently cultivating, specifically, recommending certain positions for my student ambassadors, saying, you have this skill set in these ways, you should apply for this. Really taking the time to for at least one position to build out what a resume tailored to that job looks like, what kinds of questions they might ask, what a cover letter looks like for that position, what specific examples that they have done that year that could show their skills and really present themselves as, I am the perfect student for this internship or full-time position. Here's a list of everything I've done. And then on top of that, providing them access to other working professionals, helping them negotiate for pay, as much as they can as interns, and giving them whatever they need to be happy with their internship. And so, I have had students go on to do EA marketing, Warner Bros, NBC Universal. I have students who choose, because of the stuff that they've done for us, to go find a second internship for esports teams as well. I have a student currently managing streamers socials, Disguised Toast, if anyone knows, their esports team socials, and ensuring that no matter which way they want to engage, that they're fulfilled, gets them, engaged with me and with the program, and really makes them feel like they have a stake in this. And because they have a stake in this, they're much more likely to want to put out higher quality work and want to, do everything that I'm asking for, because it's not just for the benefit of the company and the benefit for our KPIs and us being in the space, but it's also so that they can be better, versions of themselves.
If I had a time machine, I would go back and join an ambassador program while I was in college, because I was not in one, but I like the perks you all are sharing. And it's cool to hear how you all have built them in similar ways, but also customized them to the community and sort of to the area that you all are focused on. Before we wrap up for today, are there any parting thoughts you all wanted to share? Any topics we didn't touch on that you think would be helpful for our listeners to hear about?
I just want to say, if you're thinking about starting an ambassador program, I would say just do it, because usually it's pretty low investment to start with, and the energy that you get from students can really inspire you. The types of students that sign up for these ambassador roles are already go-getters. Actually, I think we've got MLH ambassadors as Postman student leaders as well, and these communities can actually build off of each other. Like, we sponsored some MLH events, so it really helps connect companies in another way, while also benefiting students. So if you're on the fence about it, just take the dive is my recommendation.
Well, thank you all for the time today. Really appreciate you coming on here. I always learn so much when I listen in. I hope our listeners are either inspired to start their own program or now have an idea of how they can go and optimize their program and change their program. And I'll be excited to see where the different campus ambassadors are in another few years. There might even be one on this webinar in the future. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day. We'd love to have you back again. And let us know if Major League Hacking can ever help out.
The State of Developer Education is brought to you by Major League Hacking. To find out more about Major League Hacking and how we're educating the next generation of developers and helping the world's leading companies reach them, visit sponsor.mlh.io. And make sure to search for Developer Education in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen, and click like and subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like it, please don't forget to leave a review, and we'll give you a shout out on a future podcast. On behalf of the team here at Major League Hacking, thanks for listening and helping us empower the next generation of technologists. Happy hacking!